do 6.4a, and then on Monday we'll do 6.4b. Sounds like a plan. All right, so 6.4 is on rectangles. So before we worked with parallelograms, okay? Parallelogram was a quadrilateral, right? Rectangle is also a quadrilateral, but it's also considered a parallelogram. So rectangle is a parallelogram with 4 right angles. Okay, so all of the angles within your rectangle have to be 90 degrees. The properties of rectangles. Since a rectangle is a parallelogram, it has all of the properties of a parallelogram. So all of those properties that we discussed for parallelograms are true for rectangles as well. Okay, so those were opposite sides are parallel. Okay, so your opposite sides will be parallel. Your opposite angles are congruent or equal to each other. Okay, so you can set your opposite angles equal. Your opposite sides are also congruent. Okay, so sides opposite each other are equal. Your consecutive angles are supplementary. So they add to be 180 degrees. So if I have angle T and angle U, I can add those two angles together and they should be 180. Okay, and then the last one was that the diagonals bisect each other. Okay, bisect meaning it splits it into 2 congruent pieces. Okay, so those were the properties of parallelograms that are still true for rectangles. Your additional properties of a rectangle. Okay, there's 2. The first one is that all 4 angles are right angles. Okay, so angle U, angle T, angle S, and angle R are all right angles. And your diagonals are congruent to each other. Okay, so TR, that entire diagonal there, would be congruent to US, this entire diagonal here. So going back to our properties of parallelograms where we said the diagonals bisect each other. So I could say UQ is congruent to QS, right? Okay, that's a property of parallelograms. And TQ is congruent to QR. Well, since these two diagonals are congruent, all of your pieces inside of that rectangle, your diagonals, I could also say TQ is congruent to QS. Okay, so each of these smaller pieces in a rectangle are congruent because your diagonals are congruent. Does that make sense? All right, so we're going to go through some examples using these properties. So my first example here, we have quadrilateral RUTS, okay, at the right there. If US is 6x plus 3 and RT is 7x minus 2, we want to solve for x. So US, that length is 6x plus 3. And RT is this length here. Okay, that length is 7x minus 2. Okay, so our diagonals, that's what we're given. What do we know about the diagonals of a rectangle? They equal each other. So I can set 6x plus 3 equal to 7x minus 2. Since both of those are my diagonals and they are congruent or equal to each other. From here I can just solve for x. So I have 3 is equal to x minus 2. I'll add 2. and x will be equal to 5.
You need to add 3.
Add 2. I'm getting x by itself. So I added 2, add 2. Questions on our first example? Shh. Just because I finished an example doesn't mean you get to start talking. Okay, second example, we have quadrilateral RUTS. So again, this one at the right here is a rectangle. We're given that the measure of angle STR, so this angle right here, is 8x plus 3. Okay, and again, that was this angle. And the measure of angle UTR, so this angle right here, is 16x minus 9. What do all of the angles in your triangle have to be? 90. Okay, so angle T right here is 90.
Attention staff and students, we are currently on a soft lockdown for a K-9 SNP. Please remain in your classrooms and ignore all bells until all clear has been announced. Again, we are currently on a soft lockdown for a K-9 SNP. Please remain in your classrooms and ignore all bells until all clear has been announced.
They're random? All right, so shh. So all of our angles in our rectangle are 90 degrees. So since we have the two angles that make up angle T, we can add them together and set them equal to 90. Okay, so 16x minus 9 plus 8x plus 3 should equal 90. From here, I can combine like terms, so I have 16 and 8. That's 24x. And I have negative 9 plus 3. So we have minus 6 is equal, to 90. I'm going a step ahead here in my brain. Add 6 to both sides. So we have 24x is equal to 96. Divide by 24. X is 4. Now, in our example here, we want to find the measure of angle STR, not just X. So I need to plug in 4 for X for STR. Okay, so the measure of angle STR will be equal to 8 times 4 plus 3. Okay, so I have 32 plus 3. That'll be equal to 35 degrees. Okay, make sure you are reading your problem so you know what you're looking for. So the first example we did, it just said solve for x. On this one, it wanted you to find the measure of that angle. Okay, so make sure you look back at that problem to see what it's asking for. Okay, questions on that? All right. Okay, on the back then, I want you guys to do 1 through 4. Okay, you're using this rectangle here. Shh, quiet. You're using this rectangle here. In each problem, your measures change. Okay, they do not stay the same for each problem. Okay, something will change about it, or you're looking for something else. So do problems 1 through 4. Right, is that talking about? No, you can't.
We're going to have our
I was
I do not want to put I think because you're going to get a 4 out of 15. I got a 5. A 5 out of 15? So I do use those corrections, but what's corrections is wasted. I listen, I do good. Sam, I'm like, no, I'm excited. No. I'm not. What'd you get through? I have my shoe with me. My eyes are twitching. I got the bottle of right, and she was like, this one. This one? It was cat eye. That's a cat eye. Yeah, that's what I saw. I don't know. She walked along beside me from the crowd. Now it's on. I said because it was large side, and I pushed the fourth outside, so down, up, down, I don't even know. The cat iron, the guy in the I for this one, oh my god! And why did it? I did it. She marked like some wrong, like you marked her like it. She never marked her. I was racing to grade this one. I was like, school again today? I don't think so. I woke up at 7:22 and I was everyone. They're gonna be like, what? It's okay, I didn't even drink anything. Well, you're not naturally straight. Well, neither is mine, but when I think about it, I've heard of that lunch and my scrunchie. It's straight.
So you have to find a Y first. Like Y first, and then you plug it in.
Or equals my
This time, students at your
I did it with me before.
I'll explain it to Stephen.
He just, I'm wondering.
Well, the other ones that you Friday.
Wait, and then I plug this one into advisory.
Yeah, so I can take 185 right? And then these two things I'm gonna try and calculate. So if I find 185 equals to what can I do that number?
Is that where it has like changes? No, that's the first one. EP is the one with the demographics. It's a lot of cerebral and a lot of like crap.
So 118 has to be split.
Yes. Sorry, it's wrong with zero. 59. Well, people say in half. No sex. No, because you can sex me, but then I can't sex you back, so that's not fair. And it's Friday. You go to the library.
All right, I'm gonna start going through these problems. So quiet down for me, please. Number 1, you had BE is 6y plus 2 and CE is 4y plus 6. In a rectangle, all of these pieces of your diagonals are congruent. Since those are congruent, I can set them equal to each other. Okay, and you should have gotten y is equal to 2. And you did just have to find y. You didn't have to find any of those lengths. For the next one, number 2, angle BEA is 62. Okay, that's this angle right here. Now what I'm going to do is look at this triangle. I'm going to look at this triangle ABE. Now this triangle, these two sides here are congruent. That means its opposite angles are congruent because it's an isosceles triangle. Okay? Now to find one of those angles, I can take 180 and subtract 62 since all three have to add to be 180. Okay, when I do that, I get 118. Now that 118 has to be split between my two congruent angles. So I can divide that number by 2. So my angle measure of BAC would be 59 degrees. Okay. Next, in number 3, we have angle AED is 12x. And angle BEC, this one right here, is 10x plus 20. These two angles are vertical angles. What are vertical angles? What do I know about vertical angles? They're congruent. Okay, they're the same. So vertical angles are equal. So I can set 12x equal to 10x plus 20. Okay, so I have 2x is equal to 20 and x is equal to 10. Now in this problem, I had to find the measure of angle AED. Okay, so I want to plug in 10 for x right here. So I have 12 times 10 So the measure of angle AED would be equal to 120 degrees. Okay. All right, so number 4.
The soft lockdown is complete. Please go back to your normal routine. However, at this time, no one is allowed to leave the building until an all clear is given. The soft lockdown is complete. Please go back to your normal routine. However, at this time, no one is allowed to leave the building until an all clear is given. Thank you.
All right, so in number 4, we're given BD is 8y minus 4, and AC is 7y plus 3, and we want to find the length of BD. So in order to do that, we want to find y first. Well, since both of these are your diagonals, I can set those two equations equal to each other to solve for y. So we have 8y minus 4 is equal to 7y plus 3. Okay, so I'll end up with y is equal to 7. Now I do want to find what BD is. Okay, so I can plug in 7 for y. So we have 8 times 7 minus 4. So BD will be equal to 52. Questions on those first 4? Do they make sense now that I kind of went over them? All right, I'm going to skip number 5, and we're going to look at number 6. Okay, so number 6, you have AB is 6. So if I look back up on my picture here, AB is 6. Okay, I also am given BC is 8. Okay, so BC is 8. And we want to find the length of BD. All right. BD, that length is also equal to which length? AC, right? Now if I look at, I'm going to try and make this darker for you. If I look at AB, AC, and BC, what does that form? A triangle. What type of triangle? A right triangle, because angle B has to be 90 degrees. Okay, angle B has to be 90 degrees. Do you remember how I find the hypotenuse of a right triangle if I'm given the other two sides? Do you remember? It's on one of the posters on my wall.
Yes, it is. The square root of 2 times the length.
A squared plus B squared equals C squared. That is the Pythagorean theorem. So with rectangles, you might be asked to use the Pythagorean theorem to find one of the other sides or one of those diagonals, which would be the hypotenuse of that right triangle. Okay? So my two legs are A and B. In my picture, I'm given A and B here. Okay, so I can plug in 6 for A and 8 for B, or vice versa. Okay, so we'll have 6 squared plus 8 squared is equal to C squared because I want to find that diagonal length. So we have 36 plus 64 is equal to C squared. I just squared both of those numbers. Can add those together to get 100 is equal to C squared. Now to get C by itself, we take the square root of both sides. So C is going to be equal to 10. Questions on number 6? Okay, I'm going to go through number 5. Okay, I'm going to go through number 5. I did just want to skip it and do that last one first, but I'm still going to go through 5. So, in number 5, we're given angle DBC is equal to 10x. Okay, so DBC, that's this angle right here, is equal to 10x, right? And we're given angle ACB, this angle here, is 4x squared minus 6. Okay, these two angles, what do I know about those two angles? No? Those are congruent because it makes an isosceles triangle with your pieces of your diagonal. Okay? So since I have that isosceles triangle, those angles would have to be congruent. So I can set those two equations equal to each other. So I have 10x is equal to 4x squared minus 6. Now to solve this, we need everything on one side of our equation because it's a quadratic. Okay, it has an x squared in it. So that means I'm going to subtract 10x from both sides. So it's going to be equal to 0. And I'll have 4x squared minus 10x minus 6. You cannot combine these two terms. They are not like terms.
Attention staff and students, we are all clear. The K9 SNP is complete. Again, we are all clear. The K9 SNP is complete. Thank you.
All right, from here, what I'm going to do, I'm going to factor out a 2. Okay, all three of these terms can divide by 2, so I'm going to first factor out a 2. So I have 2x squared minus 5x minus 3. Okay, now in order to solve for x, I need to factor. Okay, so you need to factor this 2x squared minus 5x minus 3. Okay, to do that, we use this x here.
Oh, I remember that.
Multiply. Okay, multiply your first and last term. I have 2 times negative 3. That's negative 6, right? Your middle term, negative 5, was on the bottom. I need to see what multiplies to negative 6 but adds to negative 5. It's a nice review for you. No. If I did negative 2 and negative 3, that would be a positive 6. If I did negative 2, positive 3, this would be a 1.
Negative 1, negative 5.
I heard somebody say it. It's negative 6 and 1. Okay? Shh. Quiet, please. If I multiply negative 6 times 1, I get negative 6. If I add negative 6 plus 1, I get negative 5. So now instead of writing this negative 5x here, I can write this as 2x squared minus 6x plus 1x, then minus 3. So I split this. Okay? So I'm going to group this section and group this section. Now in each of these groupings, I want to see if I can factor anything out. So in this first set here, what are my like terms for both of these that I could factor out? The x's and a 2. So I can take out a 2x. When I do that, what's left in this term? X. What's left in this term? 3. For this one here, I can't factor out anything, so that's technically just 1. And I still have x minus 3. Okay, notice both of these say x minus 3. That's one of your factored parentheses. Your other one is this 2x and this plus 1. Okay, so I have 2x plus 1 and x minus 3. Do you remember doing that?
I do, definitely do.
I do.
Because it was one of my worst freaking.
Did they use the box?
A box.
Okay. Shh. Once I get to this point, I'm still looking to solve this. So this is still equal to 0. Okay? And I still have this 2 out front. Okay, remember I factored out that 2 first, so that 2 stays here. Now, I want each of these pieces to be equal to 0. So we have 2x plus 1 equals 0, and x minus 3 equals 0. And we want to solve for x in both cases. So I'll subtract 1 here. So I have 2x equals negative 1. Divide by 2. And x is negative 1/2. This one, I need to add 3. And x equals 3. Now, since I'm looking for a length of something, right? My x value is not going to be negative. Okay, so my answer for x in this case is 3. In this problem, just to finish it up really quick, we were looking for the measure of angle ACB. So I need to plug in what I found for x, which is 3, here. Okay, so the measure of angle ACB will be equal to 4 times 3 squared minus 6. Okay, I need to square my term first. So I have 4 times 9 minus 6. Then we can multiply. That's equal to 30 degrees.
Oh, I'm dyslexic. I thought that was a 9.
On the homework, is there any, oh, do we have a,
You still need to remember how to factor.
what is your intermediate square?
I don't know. I don't remember.